I'm Kyle, and I work with some of the most impressive leaders and teams delivering services for the world's largest mining and energy companies. Real leadership happens in these tough conditions and high-risk environments, and here are the stories from leaders on the front line.
Nathan, great to have you on the video here. And I've been really looking forward to this conversation, actually, because, it's always great. We're out in the field, so obviously there's a little bit of noise going on in the background, but I think that just adds to the ambiance here. So really keen on, when you think about your career life, tell me kind of what were the main things, like when you think back, what were the main things that, the main points in time that you remember that kind of led you to being the rig manager on Rig 33?
So it all starts, I started off in Rig 23 back in 2012. So I spent nearly 10 years over there. And I guess the management at the time from there was very strong.
Yep.
The boys then were really great mentors when it comes to safety, the way that we done our jobs, following the procedures and everything like that. So I guess I took a lot from that. And I tried to carry that on throughout my career, and then which pretty much got me to where I am today. And I'm still trying to enforce and do the mentoring that I do with this rig, Rig 33. So I think that was the biggest thing, was just the mentoring that the rig managers at the time back in the day, and the time that they put into us to train us up to be the people we are today. So
yeah, and what were some of the are there points in time that you think of, particular things that just stick out in your mind that kind of, you often reflect on or remember, or is it more of kind of just a general?
It's just a general,
yeah.
Really. Like everything really does stick out to me. Like I do think back on it from time to time. Like there's probably some things that probably stick out a little bit more than others, but the biggest thing was definitely the great culture. That was the biggest thing, and the boys getting along together, working together, sort of thing. So,
and when you talk about great culture, because it often can mean sort of different things to different people, what kind of things do you?
So the biggest thing really was the safety culture and the boys looking after each other, not just themselves. So there was never a point where someone would do something wrong and someone would turn a blind eye to them. Like everyone would stop the job if there was something that they saw that was wrong. And then we acted on that, and then instead of just being the individual person, we'd pull them up as a crew, so everyone was aware of the situation. So that was probably one of the biggest things, to be honest with you. And just the boys actually getting along together as well, like that goes a long way.
Yeah. And what does that look like? It's always interesting. People talk about how teams look after each other. Pulling people up, some of those words that we use. Like, what does that look like to you when it's working well?
Well, you can see it, like from a rig manager's perspective. We can see when the boys are pulling each other up and they're actually talking about it. They're having their TBM meetings, and in our debriefs at the end of the shift, they actually bring it up as well. Yep. So they're talking about these situations, and then also pass that on to the next crew who comes in for their pre-tower meeting. And that way that passes it around through all the crews.
Yeah, good one. And do you coach that, like as people are coming up the ranks?
We do, mate. Yeah. We try and keep all our conversations open. So there's not ever a point in time where the boys should feel uncomfortable about talking about these things that may happen. So if we be open with them, they be open to us as well, sort of thing. So yeah, fair. That's fair. And can you tell, like, when people are uncomfortable? What do you? You definitely can, mate. Like, when someone's feeling a bit more uncomfortable, you can see by their body language they'll be looking down or not looking towards you, sort of thing. So but we try and be as approachable as we can, which makes them guys feel a lot more comfortable being able to step forward and talk to us about these things.
And, I was looking at the crew today, actually, when we were sitting in there, and, not that I want to judge people on their age, but geez, a lot of young faces. Right?
Yeah, there is, mate. There is.
When you look at it,
makes me feel old sometimes. But
I hear you. What have you had to adjust your own style with kind of as new people? I guess either through just the number of new people that are coming in to the industry, or how do you kind of deal with it as in your leadership style?
I've definitely had to step back and just slow things down a lot more. Like, a lot of these guys are new, especially to Rig 33, being a newer package to the field. So we've definitely slowed operations down and the way that we talk to these guys, just so they can understand exactly what we're doing. We try and simplify the way that we talk to these fellas as well, which just gives them a little bit better understanding of our, let's say, operations and procedures and everything that we run with. So
No, fair enough. And I think it's a challenge. It doesn't matter whether it's rig industry. I think across all industries we're hearing of challenges in lots of places that we work. Is there any you got any hot tips that you'd share with people with the kind of either newer people coming in or changes in generations that all we all go through newer generations. We were all young once too, but
yeah, no, that's right. I guess the biggest key is just having patience with the crews, with all these new people that are coming through. It's not going to, we can't expect them to just pick it up instantly. We need to use this time and to build them up to the people that we need to be. So
yeah, and I think from a safety perspective, but also kind of from an operational perspective, we've been talking a lot about how we explain the why of things. We've got a lot of rules in place in an industry, either procedures or new equipment or engineering controls that have been put in place. But some of the feedback I've heard as I've been talking to people is some folks have kind of lost the reason that we do
why
that.
we have those
and
the equipment in place, etc.
Yeah, and how do you think about that, or how do you go about?
So we utilise your learning from incidents book. So there's a lot of good material in there that we can bring up with these newer guys to site, which shows an incident that has happened, why it's happened, and then there's some control measures that are being put in place, whether it be equipment changes, procedural changes. So I think using the LFI book is actually quite a good tool at the end of the day.
Yeah, it gives that experience.
Yeah, and that exposure to them. Like a lot of that they're not going to see anymore, but it just gives them a bit of an understanding to what it was like prior to having this good equipment that we have. So
yeah, good one. And talking about the equipment, how long have you been in the industry?
So I'm working on 11 years, I think,
okay.
or working on 12 maybe.
So geez, longer than a decade. Longer than a decade here. So when you look at when you started, you came in as a lease hand, I'm assuming, as most people do.
Yep.
How have you seen equipment evolve or approaches evolve, and kind of what are the things that really stick out in your mind that you feel like have made the biggest differences in your job or the way people go about carrying out their tasks?
More so in a company, it's more the upgrades that you guys have done with your rigs. So with your 30 series, there's a lot more gear on them that's more advanced to say what some of the older rigs are.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more things there that's more hands off now. So that's eliminating people getting hurt. So even with the upgrades with the catwalk back in the day, from manual catwalks to hydraulic catwalks, that's made a big difference as well. And just the equipment that we actually have, it's not run down. It's good condition equipment, and you're always replacing it with new when we need it. So having that support from the top when we do have a problem with equipment has been unreal, and there's no question to ask. Like, if you need it, they'll pretty much get it for you if it's called for. So.
And we often, we talk about, okay, equipment's one part, but then going back to the people, right? It's the people that make the equipment work. And in your leadership style, what are those non-negotiables with your team that you set, because to deliver that high performance that you guys have?
So really, our non-negotiables would be more in line with your mandatory safety rules. So there's no question on that. Like, if we break those, that's a big no-no for me, really. So we can't be doing that, and also deviating from procedures as well. I try and keep on top of the boys with that as much as I can. Mm-hmm. But if a change does need to be made, the boys are pretty good. They'll come see me and we'll talk about it, and then we'll try and amend those to suit.
And what's something, when you think about your team, what's something that you wish they knew about you that you've never told them? I won't share this one with them. How about that?
To be honest, I quite don't know. I've never really thought about that question before, that they don't know about me.
Or when you think about kind of the way you came up to be where you are today, be a rig manager, what's something that you wish you would have either told yourself if you went back to either being a driller or at least or being a driller when you first started managing people?
Yeah.
What would you tell yourself back then? That today that you probably didn't know back then.
Probably the biggest thing was to keep calm.
Yeah.
I used to be a hothead a little bit, and then coming up further up the ranks, not pushing day rig manager, I've learnt that keeping calm and just nutting it out, talking to the boys rather than getting a little bit angry at times.
Yeah.
It doesn't help you at all. So just, that would be my biggest thing, really.
What brought you to that conclusion? Were there some experiences where you learned that lesson that you can?
Yeah, it doesn't go well with your crew. You can kind of put them offside with you, and then they start not working together or working with you. They work more towards against you, sort of thing. So that was probably one of the biggest things I took away from when I first started drilling to where I am now, is just you can't really be like that anymore.
It's such an interesting thing, isn't it? I think people are promoted and rise up the ranks in business because they're really good at the job they do typically, right? You're good lease hand, you become a good floor hand, and so on up the ranks. And then at some point we've got to learn these management skills, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes we miss those along the way, or there's just not an opportunity to learn about it. So I think it's really, it's a great reflection about that calmness. You probably that kind of standard that you used to hold yourself up to. Bring other people up to that, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. So.
Yeah, good one. And you're still thinking about that question.
Oh yeah, mate, I definitely am.
What would you tell that one will plague you tonight? I can you can send me an iPhone video. I'll trim it in there at the end.
Yeah.
But when you what are some of the experiences you've had with other leaders that you've worked with, either as you were on rigs or other things in your career? Is there anybody that you think of, you don't need to name names, but is there anybody you think of that you go, geez, that person displayed some behaviors or some things that, that I think about a lot, they made a mark on me, or, and what are some of those behaviors when you think about them, or what's influenced you, how other leaders have carried out their leadership styles?
It's definitely one who stood out the most when I was back on 23. I won't say any names.
Yeah,
but
that's all right.
No, just the way that he conducted himself, just being real professional, was probably the biggest thing. The way that he spoke to the boys, the way he mentored, like he wouldn't get angry at anyone. He'd let you know if he's disappointed if you did make a mistake, but then he wouldn't hold a grudge. That was his biggest thing. He'd tell you what the problem was, and then he'd help you to improve on that as well. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I took from him, which I try and do myself now as a rig manager. So I think that's the biggest thing, and I do think about it actually quite a lot, just the way that he conducted himself as a rig manager. So I try to follow in his footsteps as much as I can.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I guess before we wrap up, is there anything that when you think about other leaders and something that they should know, they should take away about something that just really sticks out, that you just go, man, I either wish I knew that before, or other people really, this is something I've learned that other people really need to take away. I know we've talked about a few things, calmness and taking the opportunity to teach people, but is there any other ones that come to mind?
Not a great deal, but I guess the biggest learning actually that I've had, like, I actually left Eastonwell probably about, let's say, 12 months ago. Won't say the reasons why, but it's the support that you get from the top end, which was the biggest thing that I noticed between the two companies that actually brought me back. So everyone from yourself down, everyone in HR department, the support that you get from being out in the field, you're only a phone call away, and everyone's welcomes you to help you out as much as they can. Like, that's the biggest thing, really.
I mean, it's such a great point. I appreciate the accolades. That's not what I'm here for, though. But I think, that message up to the next level or the next level after that. It's actually one of the reasons I'm doing these interviews. Is I think it's so important that not only there's an opportunity to share knowledge between other leaders, and particularly leaders at the front line of operations, but also emphasize the importance of how leadership behaviors all the way through an organization cascade down, and the importance that we're focused on the business that we're running, whether it's a service or we're creating a product or whatever it is, that we're focused on that front line and where we deliver that service and product. So, I think it's great that you highlight that, because it's just an important reminder for anybody watching this that's a manager, wherever you sit in an organization, that the work we do or the way we behave, it impacts everybody
it definitely
in the
does,
organization.
man. 100%.
Yeah. So, man, that's fantastic. Well, thank you. I always appreciate getting people in front of the camera to share stuff. You kind of don't know how far this goes with people, but there's just so many great lessons to come out of this, and appreciate a bit of noise in the background, but I think it adds to the reality of all of this. So, man, fantastic stuff.
Thanks for your time.
Oh, thank you. No, it's great.